Welcome to Basic Money Talk. My name's Rich. This is the podcast about simple financial advice and everyday money matters. I'm going to keep these episodes short and sweet so you can get on with your day. Thanks again for joining me.
Sometimes we stress and too much we think. Life can be over before we all blink.
Hey guys, how are you today? Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I hope you're doing well and you're having a great day. Thanks for being with me. Do you have a buffer account? What is a buffer account, Rich? Probably a term I made up. But what is an emergency account? You probably heard about having an emergency account. It's a super important thing to have in your life. 6 months worth of expenses in cash to cover an emergency. So life happens. There's all sorts of unexpected things that can happen. You can get into a car accident. You can get sick and have doctor bills. You could lose your job unexpectedly. You might have to fix an appliance. You might have to fix something big. Anything unexpected you need to be able to handle, and you don't want to put that on a credit card. That is the main goal. Probably one of my biggest fears is losing my job. For a while, I worked in software industry, and so that was common to be worried about your job security. So having that money set aside was really important for me, so that when I did lose my job, it happened twice, I was able to cover things, no problem. So that's an emergency account. I'm talking about a buffer account in today's episodes. A buffer account is just a separate savings account you have, and you put in some extra cash in it to cover unexpected monthly expenses. So you go to the bank, you open up a separate savings account and link it to your checking account, and that's really easy to do. You can have multiple savings accounts, and you link that to your checking account, and you're going to put $500 or $1,000 in there. If you're single, you put in $500. If you're married and have kids, you put in $1,000 or $1,500. This is your buffer account. And this is going to cover unexpected monthly expenses. So ideally, you have a monthly budget. You know what your income is. You know what your expenses are. And you get by month to month. Things are tight, but you do it. You might have other goals you're saving for, but every month, something unexpected could happen. Here's an example. You have to get new tires on your car. You have to get a new TV. You have to buy a bunch of new clothes. School starting, so you have to buy a bunch of new clothes and school supplies. Summer starting, so you have to buy a bunch of extra supplies you didn't expect. Winter's coming, and you realize you need some winter coats. So these are things that are not emergencies. It's not an emergency because it's going to happen. It's part of life. But you might not always have the bandwidth to pick up that extra expense in your budget. So you don't want to get stuck and pull that money from important savings accounts, okay? So you put it in a buffer account. I'll give you another great example. You ever been to the grocery store and your card gets declined? I have. It sucks. It sucks. I had to say, I'm sorry, I can't pay for this. What do I do? And I wheeled my cart over to the customer service. I ran home. I think I got a credit card or my wife's debit card and came back and paid for the groceries. This can happen even if you have money, right? The card can stop working. There could be a problem at the bank. A number of things could happen. It's a horrible thing, but you have to plan for things to happen. So there are expenses that happen in your life. They don't happen every month, but they're things that happen, and so you need to be prepared for them. But they're not necessarily emergencies. Another great example is a doctor's bill. Every year, you probably have a deductible on your health insurance, let's say $800. So let's say in July, you start a new calendar year. So you go to the doctor's, and you end up with a $200 bill because you have a deductible, and they don't cover everything until you reach that deductible. You might not have an extra $200 or $300, so it sits there and you don't pay it. It's not an emergency. You knew you had to go to the doctor's once a year. You know you have to get a checkup, but it is an unexpected expense that's a little bit more than what you'd have every month. Another example is cars. If you have a used car or a car that's older than 3 years, you're going to need new brakes. You're going to need new tires. You're going to have to rotate the tires. These are expected expenses. They're not emergencies, okay? So you can't say pull it from your special savings account because it's an emergency. If you have to, great. But having this extra money in your buffer account covers you. You just transfer and you're all set. This is just a really good thing I created and I wanted to share with you. I came up with it because we had an emergency account, and I'll talk about that in another episode. Having an emergency account is so important and it's such a good tool. But we realized that a lot of times we were pulling money from that emergency account when expenses were coming up that we couldn't handle, but they weren't really emergencies. We knew they happened, and we just wanted to be able to get that money easily when they happen. So that's called a buffer account, and it's just a really good tool I think you should set up. Again, you just create a separate savings account, put in a bunch of money in there, and then if something happens, you can just transfer money in your app and you're all set. The key to having that buffer account is you got to replenish it, okay? If you use it, make sure you replenish it. Otherwise, if it's not full with money, it's not very helpful. All right, so that's having a buffer account, and I want you to set that up for yourself. Have a goal to set that up. Even if it's $100, go to the bank. You can actually just do this easily. Most of the time, you go online to your bank, and you log in, and there's a link to open another account. Enter some information, and voila. I haven't used that word in a while. You have a separate savings account linked to your checking account. Put in a couple $100 in there, and you know you will be covered. You no longer have to worry about being stuck at the grocery store or out to dinner or having to pay an unexpected medical bill because it's not really an emergency. You'll have so much less stress on your shoulders, and you'll feel covered and you'll feel prepared. This is just a really good tool to have so you have better finances so that you're protected. You'll be less stressed. You'll feel better about yourself, I promise. So go ahead and do it, please. Open up a buffer account at your bank, put some money in there, and it's there when you need it. It's not Christmas money, okay? It's not special gift money. It's buffer account for little things that pop up that you didn't plan for. Thanks for listening. I'm going to talk about emergency savings accounts in another episode so we could talk a little bit longer about that stuff. But this is just a really quick tip. If you have a chance, share my podcast, leave a review. I really appreciate it. Go to my website, basicmoneytalk.com. I have some cool courses. You can share some really good blog articles that might help you even more, some cool tips. I just want to help you out with simple financial advice. Everyone deserves to get ahead and feel better about themselves and not worrying about how they're going to pay their bills. So I believe that. All right. Thanks. Have a fantastic day.